Yo guys, what up, Viper here, and we had a super big surprise quick patch in Illuvium Arena on this Wednesday, and there's a super insane change in the meta. Everything feels like completely driven up, the game feels very fundamentally changed because of one super important thing in the patch notes, and we will get into that, and I will get into the team that I used for my ladder snapshot finish this week. I got a second, felt a bit unlucky, had really good shot at first again, but yeah. Didn't make it in the end, think I could have played slightly better, probably could have made it. Now, let's get into this video, the new team, and explain the new really big and tremendous fundamental change. Okay, so here we are, and this looks like a relatively standard team that we used to be playing before, right? It is essentially Magma Enchanter team, and there's a Rhamphyre. Rhamphyre was always in a lot of teams because it was a good counter to 7 Psion, or, well, similar strategies where they like clump in the corner and you need the extra damage or something like that, right? Now, there's also Rota and Volanti in here. Why are there Rota and Volanti in here? Well, because this nowadays is mainly a Rhamphyre team. The Magma Enchanter line is only really played versus Gyro, Dust Gyro, Revenant, Vermi, Spore, like those kind of things, because the Rhamphyre line, the Rhamphyre build has some sort of issues versus Dust or Mega Power reduction, and well, Spore taking energy and Revenant giving really crazy shields. Now, why is it mainly a Rhamphyre team? Well, Rhamphyre essentially got 4 buffs in this patch. First of all, Rhamphyre itself, the Omega ability does about 10% more damage, which is a big deal, it's 10% more damage. Then second, Search Module, one of Rhamphyre's top augments, got a 25% buff essentially, because now you gain 10 instead of 8 Omega power per crit. So that's another buff, multiply that with the 10% on the Omega ability. Then Inferno, Rhamphyre's signature trait, got changed. Instead of doing flat energy damage, we are now doing a percentage max health as pure damage. Which this essentially means, the main thing here is this essentially means Inferno is okay at taking down tanks, while previously it was pretty much only really taking down like 1000 HP Psion units and stuff like that. So now you actually can take down like bigger guys, behemoths and colossus and things like that. And on the second note, the opponent cannot just like hard counter your entire Inferno trait with one single fortification catalyst for resolve or an earth trait in their team and so on and so on. So Inferno is like a lot stronger, a lot more consistent. It still has the similar weaknesses of it's weak against shields, it's weak against a lot of very consistent healing, but it kind of has to be consistent healing on lower HP units due to the max health trait, and if they are lower HP baseline units, Rhamphyre might just one-shot them with one Phantom ability. So Rhamphyre feels like a very universally strong and playable unit now, that if you don't have like a strong counter to it, it's gonna be a winning strategy compared to before, where Rhamphyre was some really niche, cheesy thing that sometimes it got the ability of, sometimes it didn't, sometimes, I don't know, it felt like an overall weak unit, like a tier 3, tier 4 unit strategy if it wasn't like a counter. Now Rhamphyre seems to be a tier 1 unit that if not countered is gonna be winning the game basically, right? So that is really strong. But now the fourth really big change that is an insane buff to Rhamphyre is that in the patch notes, the TLDR on like the boring math thing, if units take damage, they gain more energy now, right? It used to be that units didn't really gain much energy while taking damage. That's why the fights were taking so long. That's why we just didn't really deal any damage and we played for overtime and overtime and overtime. Now, if units take damage, they get double the energy that they got before. I think the numbers line up to around, if a unit gets 100 damage, they get 5 energy, which if you want to look at, for example, Rhamphyre, 1800 HP, let's say Rhamphyre takes 1000 damage, that's 50 energy. 50 energy, that's 25 energy than before. That is a big deal because Rhamphyre oftentimes was very close to casting ability or not, and casting the ability is obviously incredibly massive. It de-aggros melee damage dealers, and it is a crazy damage deal itself. Especially combined with some kind of Omnivamp on the Rhamphyre, it will literally full heal the Rhamphyre if it gets to hit the ability. I think in a lot of sense Inferno is better than before, so you don't have to hit the ability on everything, but you can undo. If you don't hit the Rhamphyre Omega on like crucial enemy units, you're still not in a super good spot. But, well, yeah, people have to play around Rhamphyre a bit, spread out their boards. Spreading out their boards seems to be a very good strategy at this point. It used to always be good versus Rhamphyre. We could just tank Rhamphyre with Invokers and such in the past, where we had Indomitable and Vitality Veils and such, and Resolve Augments. Okay, we had like way better setups. But we also don't have to play squishy invokers, but like some more tanky and healing oriented units. So we'll probably see meta shifts towards teams that are able to play ranged units that spread out instead of full melee units, because Rhamphyre will probably kill all those melee units very consistently. Let's skip the meta predictions and talk a little bit about the team, but I don't think there's like too much to talk about, because you can check out the previous video on the Magma Enchanter team, on how to play that and how to play those matchups. The TLDR is you go for Magma Enchanter line if you face Vermis, if you face Spore, if you face Gyros and Dust, like those kind of things where the Rhamphyre isn't that strong against, because Magma Enchanter is pretty much a super hard counter to those teams. Maybe you lose turn 1 and turn 2, but starting turn 3, they don't even kill a single unit anymore usually, versus your 5 Bulwark, Enchanter, shield setup, resistance setup, plus Mystic healing and shield setup, right? So that is really, really strong there. That's why we played this second option in that team. There's other things. If people want to hard counter your Rhamphyre line with 7 air and such, you can play the Jotun Beam of Verdant team as the second option in your team. So yeah, you essentially want to go for Rhamphyre as your main thing versus the average team. And if people try to hard counter Rhamphyre, you want to put like a secondary team option into your team to beat those against like all kind of 7 air kind of cheesy things. Verdant Behemoth thing is really good. Against all the Gyro and Vermi things, this Enchanter thing is really, really good. Overall, fitting the Enchanter thing here into this deck is a lot easier, because we could pretty much take the old Enchanter team, we add these 2 air rogues, and there we are. How do you approach the Rhamphyre line in the game? Well, it's pretty much simple. You go for Air Grocco, Volante, Rota on turn 1. That is just a 3 air to rogue turn. And then on turn 2, you can go Rhamphyre and you can bond with the weapon. So you have a 3 air, 2 rogue and Inferno setup already. You only have 1 single Grocco as a frontline unit, so that will probably die quickly and the enemies will run into your Rhamphyre AoE and they will be blown up. And then on turn 3, you kind of have a lot of options already, and it depends a bit on the matchup, so I'll just elaborate on what you should be having in your head as thoughts. But the easy line that you can just like start with playing and see how it goes is you just go Scarabok, Apon, Earth Grocco, 3 Earth, 3 Bulwark, and then the following turn you can go for Adorius and maybe equip a Ranger suit or equip like a synergetic field or like 1 Augment basically, right? That is the easy line. It is turn 1, Rota, Volante, Grocco, turn 2, Rhamphyre plus weapon, turn 3, Scarabok, Apon, Grocco, turn 4, Adorius, and then you start playing Ranger suits and Augments. You can also essentially start playing Augments and other things earlier. You can skip the Adorius and you play more Augments. It kind of does depend on the matchup. I would say in matchups where you feel like your Rhamphyre needs to one-shot the enemy team with the first cast, but it currently isn't, then skipping Adorius makes sense and you can go for a search module setup. If you're against a Behemoth team, you usually want to go Vitality Veil for the untargetable option, plus a search module, so the Rhamphyre can one-shot those Behemoths, like actually do 2000 damage if it hits the crit on the Omega ability. And then in matchups like Mirrors, where you're essentially burning down through Phantom, and Rhamphyre while in the air is also dodging the enemy Rhamphyre's ability, so you can just like outlast, out-heal, you need to out-heal the Inferno. That's where, for example, Redemption Core comes in. It's 4% max health regen every single second after you drop to 40%. So this is out-healing, it is healing you while being under the effect of 1 Inferno, and it's almost mitigating 2 Inferno ticks, so very, very good augment on Rhamphyre in the Mirror. And then yeah, in the Mirror I think you can just give out the flat 40 Omnivamp. In most other matchups you want to give 20 Omnivamp, the ally option, and your Rhamphyre wants to have like Search Module and Vitality Veil. Or if you're playing versus somebody that's clumping in the corner with empaths, you want to play Search Module and a crit chance augment, so your Rhamphyre just has more crit chance, gets more crits, gets more Omega power on crit from Phantom and Search Module, and the Omega ability itself is just going to deal a whole lot more damage because it crits more. That's what Phantom does, right? So that's like about what you need to know here. I have a bunch of 20 cost augments in this team now, because 20 cost augments are very, very efficient. They are far outperforming like 40 cost augments at this point oftentimes, or not for every augment, right? But a lot of augments got changed where the 20 cost option is far more money efficient than the 40 cost option. So I really, really like these 20 cost options here, so I can just do something else with the 20 points in my turn. I'm very happy about that. The biggest worry that I had when the augments got changed to, you can only play 1 in your team, was that I felt like, well, 20 cost augments are going to be hard to justify. Now 20 cost augments are easy to justify again, making your turns and your movement more flexible. Another thing to note is in the mirror, you can certainly cut the Grokko and the Skaraborg in the like turn 5-6 kind of area, and you can go for Seer and Jotun. You have two options with Seer and Jotun. Either you try to kill the enemy Dorius because there's no frontline protecting it, or the enemy Gazer, like whatever mystic Illuvial they choose to play, or you try to have Seer and Jotun kill the enemy Rhamphyre. Now, if the enemy Rhamphyre in the mirror has the usual Redemption Core and Parasitic Link setup, it is kind of susceptible to dying to Jotun and Seer if both of them are actually attacking the Rhamphyre. So you can snipe and kill it, but it has rogues next to it with the Rota and Volante. And maybe I'm currently thinking of playing more rogues. I'm currently thinking of playing a Gorilla and the Earth Volante, because Gorilla should be really good in terms of trying to kill the enemy Ranger. Just jumps the lowest physical resistance enemy, probably oftentimes the Ranger, and that's really, really good. Like, trying to kill the Ranger is very, very good in the mirror. Try to snipe it with your Ranger, with your Rota, things like that. So I'll probably add the Gorilla and some other things. I'll keep you guys updated on the list, because it's like literally the first day, the first iteration. It's sure to change, but this is like the baseline idea. Play Rhamphyre and play a second team that covers the weaknesses of Rhamphyre that you can somewhat combine with it. Well, which is somewhat easy here, because well, Rhamphyre plus like the Mystic setup is good versus other Rhamphyre setups, because shields are good versus Inferno, healing is good versus Inferno, and you kind of want to be spreading out your team anyways, so having these range, like super high range Illuvials is nice. Apon, super efficient unit that can stun the enemy Rhamphyre at the beginning and so on, so this like fits really, really nicely together, and it's a good start at learning. Before we jump to the gameplay, a big shout out to everybody who is actually like, I don't know, you know, this like Illuvium creator program, RefLink kind of thing. Big shout out to everybody of you that is actually giving, I don't know, their family members and friends, if you're like telling them, yo, Illuvium is a fun game, you like this Viper guy creator, please like click his link like once a week. Maybe if you want to download the game, click his link, download the game from Epic Store, like from there, right? Like click link, then on website, click Epic Store and so on. It really, really helps, because getting like, I don't know, realistically, if I'm more top 50, it's 1 ILV. If I'm top 20, it's 2 ILV per week. That covers my, I don't know, that just covers the time that I invest. It covers the costs for editing. It covers the costs for thumbnail design, because I'm not an editor. I'm not a graphic designer. I don't know how to make those things. I have to outsource that. Also, I don't have time to do that. I'm stretching that anyways. So yeah, if you chill that, if you make people click that ref link, it actually helps a lot. I appreciate it a lot, and it makes me able to justify making more content and so on. Now let's jump into the gameplay. So this is part of my latest stream. My latest stream was literally me recording like 3 hours before I went live, the like 15 games that I had to play for the leaderboard finish on one of my accounts that hadn't played games before, and I thought, well, this is probably some really high level gameplay that I wanted to show off. So yeah, we can jump into this. So you guys can see we are up against, I don't know, like the standard Jotun Behemoth with the old Rhamphyre tech versus Science. It's not really optimized for playing Rhamphyre as the main win condition. Now we can easily skip a bit forward. Now here on turn 1, I am passing turn 1. I would suggest, it kind of depends on the opponent and what they do and what you expect from them. I think that Tony will always play turn 1, so I don't play a Grokko in the middle of the board. But against people where I think that they might be trying to be cheesy, they know Viper's gonna skip turn 1, so I'm not gonna give away my links positioning left or right, which is kind of what I wanna know. I wanna know, are they left or right on the links, because I want to jump that side with my rogues. So yeah, if you know your opponent is just gonna play normal, just just skip the turn, it's fine. If you think your opponent might try to be cheesy and only play the Ranger and the Twine and skip the links, you can play the Air Grokko in the middle of the board. And maybe Air Grokko plus big Ranger weapon can just win a turn 1, which would be really, really massive for you. Now on the positioning for the rogues. So because we know the Jotun is gonna be positioned here, Rhamphyre wants to have the other rogues tank first, which usually means you want to have Rota, because it's a ranged Illuvial, it's gonna jump and sit there, want to be sitting like so that the enemy Illuvials can walk up and attack Rota, right? Rota is essentially your tank, is protecting your Rhamphyre. The same goes for Volante, but Volante is a melee Illuvial, so Volante will walk up to the enemies. That's why usually you want to have Volante on the side of Rhamphyre where there's no enemy melee Illuvials, and Rota on the side where they have melee Illuvials. Now here we know our opponent is always going to play Jotun in this spot here. That's why we just have both of them jump here. And one thing you can note here, that is why I chose this clip, This is like the standard positioning that people used to do on Jotun, like corner the links as far as possible. But that is okay if I play the Enchanter line, for example. It's very good versus the Enchanter line, in fact. But if I play Rogues and they immediately jump and Jotun isn't walking away, this Lynx is cornered. So in this current meta, if you don't play like a Rhamphyre or Rogue deck, if you play a melee deck, like the Lynx maybe, make sure that your Lynx has space to walk off, even if Jotun isn't moving. Even if Jotun is just immediately attacked by Rogues and immediately fighting the Rogues. Now you can see we have a lot of just auto attack and melee damage with Rogues, with these Illuviums as well. Even before Rhamphyre is casting, the Jotun is pretty much dead. So that's another thing. If you fight against these teams with Jotuns and Seers and so on, it would be really nice if your Volantes and Rotors and so on are actually attacking the Behemoths, because then they are even dying to the Rhamphyre ability, they are dying to the Inferno. And you don't need to hit the Phantom crit, which is kind of a big deal, right? Because crit is an RNG factor, it is a 50-50. Phantom Illuviums have a 40% crit plus the 10 of the team-wide rogue buff. So yeah. Then here, because I'm playing with this team, I'm just going for the Earth setup. The other option here, which I'm not sure is 100% correct, which one honestly, it depends a bit on what your opponent plays as well. If they play for like a super defensive playstyle on this turn, then going for Vitality Veil and going Search Module and Parasitic Link to give Rhamphyre Omnivamp, give Rhamphyre Untargetable, and give Rhamphyre on crit it gets 10 Omega power is better if they play the super defensive option, right? Because you need to actually kill them. But yeah, it's like hard to tell what they really go for. You can just play for your Illuviums, that's like the easier line to do, to be honest. Or you can do the Augment line. Yeah, but here, honestly, here overall as well, my positioning because of the links in the corner and things like that, it's just looking good. So just, yeah, going Illuviums is fine. It's chilling. And yeah, big Rhamphyre AoE. One thing that can happen here, which, is actually happening here. The Jotun is standing in 3 Verdant fields. So the Jotun is healing 105 HP passively from Verdant. And you see Inferno's only doing 67 damage. So this is one of the counter-ish things to... Why is there this like arrow? Okay, there's one of the counter-ish things that you can do to this deck if you have enough healing to out-heal the one Inferno. That's what I meant, right? When I talked about before looking at this turn, I can play Illuviums or I can play Augments. If I would have played Augments here, Rhamphyre would have one-shot the entire team, right? I play Augments here, we win this fight. Because my opponent went for the super defensive line. But my opponent goes for like, I don't know, Seer and other Illuviums. I kind of want to have the Bulwark and the Earth, so my Rhamphyre has more damage mitigation. Now this turn is just like, well, the Grid Augment is super efficient for 20, and we skip out on Adorius because we need the damage and we need the defense of Vitality Veil, get untargetable so Rhamphyre gets a cast off, and Search Module for some crit chance. I do not know why this arrow is here, by the way. I'm really sorry, it's technical difficulties. Opponent goes for more defenses, goes for Mystic and Gazer, but my Rhamphyre now has Vitality Veil and has damage buff, so we should be one-shotting this entire team. And I hit no crit on the Jotun, so Jotun did manage to survive, which is pretty scary. But we have 2 Inferno units alive, so Jotun is kind of burning down, and it was only Jotun attacking my Rhamphyre, so it got a second cast. You see, this is the big change in the energy gain part, where now my Rhamphyre had about 30 more energy than it would have had in the last patch. And that was the difference between my Rhamphyre casting here and my Rhamphyre not casting. Yeah, and then from here on, you can just upgrade Ranger Suit, play Adorius, get your own Mystic Shields, get your own extra support. Just keep the Rhamphyre alive, right? If Rhamphyre can cast, it literally heals to full versus this team. It just hits so many units, Omnivamps up, and then Mystic Shields and Adorius heals can just bypass the in-betweens for the casts. And yeah, we can just start the fight again. See, my opponent tried to outplay with Health Regen on Jotun. It's like, it's a fine idea. It counteracts the Verdant, counteracts the Inferno and so on. And my opponent even sniped my Ranger, but Rhamphyre just does too much damage. Rhamphyre is just incredibly strong versus these team comps now because it's very hard for them to avoid the Rhamphyre casts. You can't really just rush Rhamphyre and kill it before it gets a cast off, and tanking the casts is very risky. It's very difficult to tank the crit, and it's very difficult to tank like the damage plus the Inferno follow-up. You need to snipe the enemy ranger, you need to have so much healing around you and so on. I mean, you guys can see here the Verdant fields, if they all would be in the back, this would have been a better setup for my opponent, for example. You see, this is like beating the old meta team like super easy. I don't even, this was one of the earlier games that I've played with the team. I don't even think I played super perfect there, like I said, with some augments and optimizations, but it's just crazy strong. Rhamphyre is really good at the moment. You need to respect Rhamphyre. You cannot face tank Rhamphyre anymore, which is what we used to do. We literally played, well, resolve augment on my units, Inferno does no damage anymore. A Rhamphyre Omega probably doesn't do 100% of my health pool. Easy, I just tank it. Now, Rhamphyre Omega still oftentimes doesn't do 100% of a Behemoth's health pool, but the Inferno can do like the last 10, 20, 25% of damage because it's not mitigated by one single Resolve Augment. So the TLDR is, if you play melee teams, you can't tank Rhamphyre Omega anymore. It does too much damage. You have to avoid that. And which means, well, you run at the enemy team. If the enemy team is only clumping on one side around this one Rhamphyre and you cannot avoid it, then, well, I do suggest you play ranged strategies or rogue strategies or something that's not melee damage Illuviates. Melee damage Illuviates seem to be relatively weak in this patch versus Rhamphyre. Maybe there's some crowd control or debuff strategies that can work. Maybe we can combine Frost or Mud, things like that, to debuff the Rhamphyre a whole lot. Maybe that can work. I'm not sure. There's a lot to be tested out very early on into the patch. And yeah, I'll hope this video reaches you when this is still the best team in the game. So I appreciate you guys hanging out again. Check out the Twitch streams. I stream almost every day. I try to stream more. I've been a bit stressed about the leaderboard things and my finishes lately. So there goes that. It's been good though, right? Like a really good finishes the first 5 weeks. I'm happy about that. And I appreciate to see you guys on Twitch. Appreciate to see you guys on YouTube. See you in the next one.